She went to bed with 2 YouTube subscribers. One was her dad, and one was her husband. She wasn't running a brand. She wasn't executing a content strategy. She had just filmed herself sitting in a tractor, talking about corn. By the time she woke up the next morning, 12,000 strangers had subscribed. That was the first day of Laura Farms. And what happened in the years that followed is not the story most people think they know. Laura Wilson, that's her real name, is a 5th-generation farmer from Hamilton County, Nebraska. She is, depending on your perspective, either a YouTube creator who also happens to farm, or a farmer who accidentally became one of the most watched agricultural voices in America. The distinction matters more than it might seem, because understanding which one she actually is changes everything about how you read her story. By the end of this video, you'll understand why she ended up in front of the U.S. Senate Agriculture Committee, why her channel nearly became the target of a coordinated misinformation campaign, and why the most surprising thing about Laura Farms is not what fell apart, but what turned out to be completely, stubbornly real. The Carlson family came to Nebraska from Sweden in 1910. They arrived with very little and started farming with a pair of John Deere tractors on land they broke themselves. That original plot of ground became Carlson Farms, and over the next 4 generations, it grew. By the time Laura Carlson was born on May 11, 2001, the farm had expanded to include corn, soybeans, hogs, and cattle. Her father, Cale Carlson, farmed it. Her grandfather farmed it before him, her great-grandfather before that. Laura grew up inside all of it, not as a passive observer, as a participant. She was working alongside her grandfather and her father by the time she was 13. She started her own cow herd as a teenager. When other kids were figuring out their futures through school clubs and summer jobs, Laura was already learning soil moisture and seed corn and what it meant when rain came 3 days too late. She enrolled at Southeast Community College in Lincoln to study business administration. She wasn't walking away from farming, she was building the skills to run it better. The plan, as far as there was one, was to come back and farm, not to become a media personality, not to build a brand, just to farm. In 2020, her grandfather offered her the chance to rent some of his ground. She took it. She started putting in her own acres, corn and soybeans on irrigated land in south-central Nebraska. She was 19 years old. She had no employees, no equipment line of credit to speak of, and no roadmap for what she was doing beyond what 4 generations of family knowledge had taught her. She also had a phone, and she had Twitter, and that combination was about to change everything. And if you think the way this started was accidental, wait until you hear how fast it moved. The first piece of content Laura ever posted was not meant for YouTube. She was sitting in the cab of a tractor in the spring of 2020, and she filmed a short vertical clip walking her followers through the process of planting seed corn, what the controls do, what the planter is doing, what she's watching for. It was the kind of thing a farmer explains to a curious friend on a slow afternoon. She posted it to Twitter. It went viral immediately. The response was something she hadn't anticipated. People who had never thought about where food came from suddenly found themselves watching a 20-year-old woman explain a tractor cab with the easy confidence of someone who had grown up doing this. The comment sections filled up, shares climbed, people tagged friends. Agriculture, for a moment, became the most interesting thing on a platform not known for celebrating it. On April 24, 2020, she moved the video to a new YouTube channel she created for the occasion. She called it Laura Farms. Within a few days, the video was approaching 1 million views. She had gone to bed with 2 subscribers, her dad and her husband Grant, and woken up to 12,000. Her own words later in an interview, "It just absolutely exploded overnight." What matters about this is what it says about timing. The country was in the early weeks of the COVID-19 lockdown. People were stuck indoors, suddenly hyper-aware of supply chains and food systems, and the physical reality of how the things in their grocery stores actually got there. Laura's video landed at exactly the moment that curiosity peaked. She didn't manufacture that moment. She just happened to be sitting in a tractor when it arrived. She kept filming. The early videos show it clearly. Vertical framing, short clips, unpolished delivery. She was not trying to build a media company. She was sharing what she was already doing. The camera followed the work, not the other way around. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. Here is what most people miss when they watch a farming vlog. Someone is actually farming. The videos are the secondary thing. Laura was managing her own acreage, working alongside Grant, who she married in December 2020, and simultaneously learning to produce content, respond to hundreds of comments per day, handle sponsorship inquiries, and grow a business. All of it at once. All of it on a working farm in Hamilton County. Grant Wilson, her husband, is a sixth-generation farmer. He comes from his own deep Nebraska agricultural lineage. Together, they began farming their own operation on 100% pivot-irrigated ground. Every acre dependent on the precision of their irrigation systems. Every season tied directly to the weather, the commodity markets, and the physical condition of their equipment. The channel grew in parallel with the farm. Subscribers climbed from thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. Sponsorship deals arrived. Equipment manufacturers reached out. A merchandise line launched through bunker branding. Laura graduated from Southeast Community College while all of this was happening, studying business administration while running a business that no textbook had prepared her for. The content evolved too. Early videos were raw and spontaneous. Later videos showed better production quality, wider range, equipment demos, collaborations with other farmers, off-farm travel content, policy discussions. But the farm never became a backdrop. The farm stayed the subject. Planting days, harvest days, breakdowns, bad weather, the particular satisfaction of a field that came in clean. Viewers noticed the consistency. Unlike channels that manufacture drama or lean on personality above everything else, Laura Farms kept delivering something that felt genuinely useful. People in agricultural communities recognized the accuracy. People outside those communities felt educated. The two audiences grew together. By the time the channel crossed 500,000 subscribers, she owned 40 acres outright and was renting additional land. Her family's broader operation covered approximately 2,000 acres in south-central Nebraska. She was part of it, not a visitor to it. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. Most YouTube farming channels exist in a particular lane. They document, they educate in a folksy, accessible way. They build communities around regional identity and niche interest. They do not typically end up as recognized voices in the U.S. federal agricultural policy debate. Laura Wilson did. The Senate Agriculture Committee Republicans, the official Senate body overseeing farm policy, publicly featured Laura Wilson, identifying her as a fifth-generation corn and soybean farmer from south-central Nebraska. Her name and her story were put in front of federal legislators as an example of the next generation of American agriculture. This is not a minor detail. The U.S. Senate Agriculture Committee shapes crop insurance programs, USDA funding priorities, disaster assistance structures, and the Farm Bill itself, the single most important piece of legislation for American farm economics. The average age of the American farmer is around 58. The pipeline of young farmers entering the profession is shrinking year by year. Laura Wilson, at 23 or 24, was being held up as a counterpoint to that trend, and the reason her story reached Washington at all was because she had been documenting it publicly for years. The content she was creating was not just entertainment, it was, without anyone planning it that way, a record of what young independent farming in America actually looks like. The equipment costs, the land rental markets, the crop insurance complexities. The days where everything goes wrong and you keep going because what's the alternative? She never framed herself as a policy advocate. She framed herself as someone learning to farm and taking her audience with her. But the cumulative picture those videos painted was politically significant in ways she hadn't set out to create. One phone call, one conversation, that's all it took to change the direction of everything. The version of Laura Farms that viewers see is real. The farm is real. The work is real. But real farms are not frictionless, and the full picture of what was happening behind the videos only came into focus gradually. A farmhand walked out mid-season. The details of why were not shared publicly, but the operational impact was, Laura and Grant absorbed the work themselves. An insurance dispute over farm infrastructure tied up resources and attention during an already demanding growing season. A bridge on their property collapsed, creating logistical and financial complications that took time to resolve. A particularly harsh Nebraska winter produced a snow harvest that, by most measures, pushed the limits of what the operation could handle. Laura confirmed all of this in a 2025 video where she addressed her audience directly. She didn't dramatize it, she laid it out plainly. These things happen, the finances got complicated. There are seasons where you do everything right and it still isn't enough. It was a more honest accounting of farm economics than most agricultural content ever provides. The broader context matters here. Farm income for independent operators has been under sustained pressure. Land values in Nebraska are high, and young farmers renting ground face input costs that older operators who own their land free and clear do not face in the same way. Corporate agriculture continues to expand. The federal support structures that exist were largely designed for operators several times the size of what Laura and Grant are running. She was not describing a business in collapse. She was describing the reality of farming young, in the current market, with everything working against scale. And she was describing it to 700,000 plus subscribers who had been watching her succeed, which made the honesty land harder than any polished content could have. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. In early 2025, a wave of rumors began circulating across Facebook groups and social media accounts claiming that Laura Wilson had gone through a divorce. The accounts spreading this information were not credible sources. They were fake profiles using her name and image, some of them directly messaging her followers and claiming to be her. The rumors escalated into harassment territory. Commenters began pointing to footage where her wedding ring appeared absent, or moments where Grant was less visible in videos, as supposed evidence. The speculation took on a life separate from any factual basis. Some of her followers were genuinely concerned. Others were deliberately spreading the false claims. Laura's response was not to ignore it. She addressed it publicly, on camera, directly. She and Grant had celebrated their 4th wedding anniversary in December 2024. They were together. They were farming together. The rumors were false. The accounts spreading them were not affiliated with her in any way. And the pattern, fake accounts using a creator's identity to generate engagement and direct message followers, is one that has affected other creators across the platform. What the episode revealed was something worth sitting with. A channel built entirely on transparency and genuine documentation of real farm life had become, at sufficient scale, a target for the same kind of synthetic drama that follows every creator who reaches a certain size. The content was real. The farm was real. The marriage was real, and none of that insulated the channel from people who found more engagement value in a fictional version of events. She kept posting. She kept farming. The channel kept growing. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. By early 2026, the Laura Farms channel stood at approximately 776,000 subscribers. Total views across the channel had passed 207 million. In the roughly 10 weeks between late December 2025 and early March 2026, the channel added 38,000 subscribers. She was uploading 4 videos in a single day during peak farm seasons. The channel had over 600 videos in its library. The revenue picture, across all streams, is estimated by multiple analytics platforms at $10,000 to $13,000 per month, with the caveat that this figure does not capture sponsorship deals or merchandise income separately. The actual figure is likely higher. Chief Industries, a Nebraska-based family-owned company, is among her channel sponsors. Universal Motion Components, which specializes in pivot irrigation powertrain parts, is another, a partnership that makes direct sense given that her entire operation is pivot irrigated. Her merchandise line runs through Bunker Branding, the same platform used by a number of larger outdoor and agricultural creators. She has a dedicated website at laurafarms.com. She takes business inquiries through a management contact email. What began as a girl with a phone in a tractor cab has been structured, over 6 years, into an operating media business running in parallel with an actual working farm. She is, as of 2026, in her 7th year of farming row crops, not her 7th year of YouTube. Her 7th year of farming, the things she was doing before the camera arrived, and the things she will be doing long after whatever the algorithm does next. The Swedish family that arrived in Nebraska in 1910 with John Deere tractors and a plot of ground could not have imagined this particular chapter, but the work ethic that carried them through, that part they would recognize immediately. There is a version of this story that frames Laura Wilson as a social media success story. That version is accurate but incomplete. There is another version that frames her as a young farmer struggling against impossible economics. That version is also accurate but incomplete. The full picture is this. She is a 5th-generation farmer who happened to document her first independent season at precisely the moment the internet needed to watch someone do exactly that. The combination of timing, authenticity, and genuine expertise produced a channel that grew beyond what any deliberate content strategy could have manufactured. And the fact that it grew that way, organically, from real work, is exactly why it kept growing when other channels faded. She has been honest about the hard parts, the failed seasons, the financial pressure, the operational crises, the misinformation wave. She has also been honest about the good parts, the satisfaction of a clean field, the pride of a harvest that came in, the specific pleasure of explaining something complicated about agriculture to someone who had never thought about it before. What the audience keeps coming back for is not the drama, despite what the algorithm might suggest. It is the continuity. Laura and Grant are still there. The corn is still going in the ground. The pivot irrigators are still running. The channel description still says the same thing it said in year one: learning to farm together. That is not an ending. That is the whole point. Laura farms is what happens when the right person points a camera at the right thing at exactly the right moment. And then, instead of cashing in and stepping back, keeps pointing the camera and keeps doing the thing. A Swedish farming family's fifth generation accidentally built one of the most watched agricultural channels in American internet history, got invited to Washington as a voice for young farmers, survived a coordinated misinformation campaign, and is still showing up every season to put seeds in the ground in Hamilton County, Nebraska. What comes next for Laura is her seventh growing season, a channel closing in on 1 million subscribers, and a farm that continues to be the engine driving everything. She has described farming as her calling long before it became her career, and nothing about the last 6 years suggests that calculus has changed. Here's the question worth asking. Laura Wilson built all of this while actually farming, not using farming as a backdrop for content, but running a real operation through real hardship while the camera was rolling. Do you think that level of authenticity is what the internet is actually missing right now? Or has the line between real and performed gotten too blurred for it to matter anymore?